Hello and welcome, my friend. Today I would like to show you how you can extend the standard Polarion work item form with a custom form extension, as the one you see here. So when I click, for example, on this little link, I can display in the context of the currently selected requirement all the planning activities. So in my example, work packages and linked tasks. And the cool thing is we just use one of the standard reports which ships already with Polarion. But what we do is we pass the currently selected work item ID into the field, into the query field of this report. And immediately it is context related to our work item. So that's really powerful. If you want to understand how to create reports like this one and how to make them interactive with page parameters, there's a separate video available. Have a look at this if you want to understand how to do that. So for now, what you need to do to have such a form extension available is you need to download following extension. It's called Velocity Work Item Form Extension. It's not there by default, so I strongly recommend, because it's a great piece of work, that you download it, install it on your server, and then you can do all these great things with work item form extensions. So first thing we want to do is tell Polarion that we want to display here a custom form extension. Where do you do that? You need to switch into the administration view, and there is a section called form configuration. There are all the layouts of the work items defined. So each work item layout is available here. You click on edit, and then you need following a line which tells Polarion that you have a form extension now that you want to add somewhere in the layout. You give it a label. That's what is displayed in the blue panel. So let's just call it My Important Links or reports, whatever. And we say the script should be called links.vm. Let's save it and see what's happening. So we just pick again our requirement 316, and you see it complains because this script for sure is not yet on the server. So the next thing we need to do is write the script, place the script, and you see here already where the script should be placed on the server in the directory Polarion subdirectory scripts. There should be a file called links.vm. So let's do this. Let's create a new file. New text document links.vm. And just to verify that the script is called, we just add here for now a little heading. Hello, found me. And let's see what's happening. I refresh the page. There we go. So the script was executed. It displayed the HTML stuff we've just written. So you see, it's actually quite cool. You can render CSS, HTML, make nice buttons, make it much nicer than what I do here. But we don't want to focus now on look and feel. We just want to focus on functionality. This is why we just add a bunch of links and make them really ugly. But I hope you get the idea anyway. So the form extension has two objects that you can work with. The first one is called, it's called object. Who had thought of that? And it's actually a work item. We can call any method which is available in the object class. I want to use the rendering API, not the standard API of Polarion. And to use the rendering API, I need to do the following. I need to say, I don't want to have this object. I want to have a different object. I want to have a rendering work item object, because it's more convenient to work with them. I'll show you in a minute. But to get this object, I have to use following transaction. Transaction is the second object which you have available, and transaction objects are quite helpful if you want to execute queries. For example, you can search for work items, documents, and so on and so on. In our case, we just want to get an object, a work item, rendering object by the old API object. Right, so what do you need to do if you want to render a work item? You take the work item object, then you call the render method. This will already display the work item on the screen. Then you can add additional parameters like to render it with title or to render it with links, which will make the work item clickable. But still, you need to tell Polarion if you want to render it in a work item form or in a document, and that's done with the method HTML4. Because now you tell Polarion that it should generate HTML for a frame, which is a work item frame, and then Polarion knows how to render it. And that's why you need this command. So let's clean it up a bit. We need to delete the object and pass it to our old API object method so that we get a rendering object. I forgot that. And then we are good to go. It gives us here a clickable work item. I click on it and it executes the links. I have an icon and all this stuff. And as you can see, it's really powerful because it's not a big effort to display a work item. So you just create a for next loop, iterate through the linked items. For example, if you want to see all the linked test cases, it's not a big thing to do. But again, we don't want to focus here on rendering. So the only thing we want to do is to create a little link. So what link do we want to create? This is the link we need. So let's just take this URL and analyze it. So the URL, and I will delete this stuff here again because we don't want to display a work item. We want to display a link. A link in HTML is done in the following way. You say anchor, href, now comes the URL to the page you want to link to. And then here in the middle you say what should be displayed in the link. So we can say display planning activities. Now, when we analyze this link in a bit more detail, you see it contains the project ID. In our case, it's Drive Pilot, and it contains here a combination of project ID slash, that's the HTML representation of a slash, and the work item ID. So we have not yet checked out how to get the project ID and the work item ID. And to do that, we look in the SDK of Polarion. And now we go into the rendering API, and here we search for work item because currently we have a work item at hand. And now we want to ask the work item for some additional information. And there you see this is the rendering method, what we just called. But we don't want to use the rendering method. We want to ask for fields, yes, because we need the ID, we need the project ID. So fields sounds pretty good. So we get work item fields, and you see here all the fields which are available for our item, and there is ID and there is project, and both of them gives us back a field. So in the case of the ID, we get an ID field and we say get. And in case of the project, where's the project again? Here's project. We get a project field and we say project ID. It's not, somehow it's not logic. We don't say get, we say project ID, but whatever. That's the way it is. All right, so let's go back to our code. So we want to say work item dot fields dot ID dot get. This gives us the ID. And project dot project ID will give us the project ID. Let's see what happens in the work item view. Here, so Drive Pilot is the ID DP316. And now the last thing we need to do is to make our link dynamic. So we say the project ID should replace this absolute project. So now this is where we get the project ID. And here, the work item ID should be added instead of this one. And then we should have here a slash. And then there is again the project ID. So we take again this little piece here where we get the project ID. and replace drive pilot with this dynamic query. And that's all we need to do. And this way we have built a dynamic link containing project ID, work item ID of the currently selected object. And it's actually, for now, just 2 lines of code. And if we click on it, we get the report. There we are. And that's already it. No, unfortunately not, because there's one little thing we have missed, and we will find out by whenever you create a new object. You see here we get an ugly error message, and this is because the object is not yet existing. So we try to render something which is not there. So we need to catch this this case. Otherwise, everybody will see this ugly error message, and we don't like that. This is done in the following way. Let's go back to our code. We need to introduce a new variable called allowRendering, and we will only display the HTML link if allowRendering is set to true, which is by default the case. However, we will add an additional check which tests if the object is unresolvable. That means it cannot be found in the index, or if the object is not yet persisted, so it's not yet saved. And this is exactly the case when we have this creation dialog of our work item. We can edit the work item, but it's not yet saved. And so in this case, we set allowRendering to false, and so we will not display anything. The last thing we need to ensure is that our method, which operates on the current object, is inside the if check. So it is only executed if the object was saved or can be found. That's all we need to do, and we should be safe from that point on, and let's see if it works. We create a new work item, and you see, my friend, the My Important Links section is empty. Only if we save the work item, the link will appear. And so be sure that you introduce these checks in your form extensions to avoid ugly error messages. I hope you liked the video, and sorry for making it longer than 10 minutes.